Good evening. Right now, Metro Police are desperately searching for the person or people responsible for killing a man and a woman.
I got a male down in the middle of the street.
Breaking news now, a triple shooting leaves 2 dead.
Never expect for somebody to tell you your loved one was murdered.
This Labor Day will mark 42 years that have haunted the St. Cloud family.
30 years. 30 years this family has waited for answers.
A couple months go by, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you really start to struggle with the idea that the case might not get solved and that somebody might get away with murder.
It's very unfortunate that we have any cold cases at all, and certainly unfortunate that we have as many as we do. And that's why Ryan's work and the work of Project Cold Case is so important.
Hey, good evening. Thanks for joining me tonight, or today, depending on where you are. I am Ryan Backman, the founder and executive director of Project Cold Case, coming to you this week back from home, doing the weekly Facebook Live. Today, I wanted to talk about something a little specific. You know, we've been doing a lot of these just general Q&A questions and trying to answer people's questions, and you know, sometimes that generates a lot of interaction and engagement and back and forth. But it's today I wanted to kind of focus on something a little more specific because of a Facebook post that we had yesterday, I believe, was when we shared it. And I'll share it with you today, and kind of generate the topic of ways to engage law enforcement, have conversations with the detective on your loved one's case. Hey, Derek, thanks for joining us tonight. Hope things are going well up in Canada. But I thought this was a really good thing to hit on for a lot of our families that do have issues with law enforcement. I mean, probably the most common, well, not probably, easily the most common complaint we have is that that law enforcement does not contact families. They don't call with any updates. They don't call with any information. Hey, Shannon, I'm glad that this is going to benefit you as well. Thanks for joining us tonight. It really is the most, common complaint that we get. One of the things that we do, if you've submitted your loved one's case to us, you know that, when we reach out to you, usually Frida calls, and one of the questions she asks is, when was the last time you spoke to law enforcement? And we get a range of answers from, I spoke to them last week, to I haven't heard from them in years. They don't call me. I don't even know the last time, somebody from that agency reached out to me. And so we wanted to kind of hit on a couple of things. I'm going to try to share this graphic with you real quick, and then I'm going to need y'all to work with me on this. I want to make sure that you can still hear me. It says audio is still working, but while I have this graphic up, if somebody can let me know if you can hear me, I would appreciate it. Let's see. So this is a graphic that we shared yesterday on Facebook, on social media. It's a graphic that that we feel like is very beneficial. So I couldn't tell if anybody could hear me while I was talking. I didn't get any response while that graphic was up, so I don't want to be talking in the background and then and you guys can't hear me. So if you could hear me, I will. Okay, Joey says she can hear me. Derek says he can hear me. All right, so I'm gonna put that back up there and go through it a little bit. So 6 questions to ask investigators about your loved one's case. This is just a little thing that we go through with our families because we think that it's helpful. the very first thing, like, so we'll talk about these in kind of a couple of different scenarios, if you will. So let's assume that you have not had any contact with law enforcement. The first thing you should do is reach out to that agency. KH just said, what if law enforcement chooses to ignore and dismisses you? So we're going to get into that too. So the first thing you want to do is reach out to the law enforcement agency and ask for the homicide department. Ask for the cold case unit. If they don't have a cold case unit, ask for homicide department. If they don't have homicide, ask for major crimes. Different agencies have different departments that handle their crimes depending on the size of the agency. The major crimes unit may handle aggravated assaults, sexual assaults, and homicides. They may handle any number of those. If it's a larger agency, it may have an actual homicide unit, and if it is an even larger and better equipped agency, they will have a dedicated cold case unit. Although that's not that common, unfortunately. Certainly not as common as it should be. But what you do is you reach out to that department, whichever one it is, and then you identify yourself as the loved one of a homicide victim. And then you ask who is assigned to the case, what detective is assigned to the case, and you ask if you can speak with them. Now, you're going to find out a couple of things. The reason I tell you to ask that way, ask who the detective is assigned to the case, is because a lot of times families will call up and they'll just say, is my loved one's case still open? And if it is, they say, yes, it is. And then families a lot of times will hang up. And just because the case is open does not mean that it is active, okay? And really, all homicides should remain open. Technically, agencies don't close the case even when they stop investigating it. They'll have a different word for it, like suspended or inactive, something like that. So what you want to do, and then there's also the issue of, we've had many times where a family, where a homicide detective will transfer or retire or promote and will not make the administrative change in their system that says that case is no longer assigned to a detective. When that happens, you may or may not, you may call and get somebody else and say, is my case open? And they'll say, yep, according to this, it's still open or it's still active, because somebody did not take care of the administrative task of acknowledging that they are no longer a homicide detective. But when you ask specifically who your case is assigned to, you get a name. That will sometimes trigger, if that detective is not in the homicide department or the cold case unit or the major crimes unit, a lot of times that person talking will say, oh yeah, your case is assigned to, oh wait, that person's no longer in this department. And then that'll trigger something so that that case can either get reassigned to somebody or at least, officially suspended or made inactive. So those things are important because a lot of times you're not going to get anything that you don't ask specifically about, right? So what I mean by that is, if you just call and say, is my loved one's case still open? Whoever answers that call may not do any digging and due diligence to find out, for sure if that case is still active. Instead, what they may do is just give you the easy answer, and then you hang up and you go about your business. Hey, Tamika, thanks for joining us tonight. I know you've got some insight into this topic because we've been down that road with you. All right, so let me address Doug Ritchie here, because he's posting a couple of things. The first thing is, how about doing something for the murdering of my brother? No justice. Josiah shot and killed in cold blood, but no justice. So, Doug, I think you're new here. We don't investigate cases. We're a nonprofit that helps raise awareness for unsolved murders. So if you're nice, we can help you. But if you lash out at us, then we've got plenty of families that are appreciative of the services we provide. So the first thing you would need to do, Doug, is submit that case, your brother's case, through to Project Cold Case through our website, and then we can reach out and talk about ways that we can help. Lynn Piazza says, we found out from the key witness in our father's murder case that our mayor of city was involved, plus the local sheriff department and the local mafia mob. So I guess I'm done. They are not going to expose their own. They blocked me from getting any information. Now we are starting to understand. I don't have the money to fight the city of where my father was murdered, unfortunately. So Lynn, you got a very complicated case, and one that would, it would be shocking if all of those people were involved. I don't know what city that is, but I don't know why a mayor, the sheriff, and the mob would all, or at least the mayor and sheriff would jeopardize their political careers for a case. And I don't know where mafia and mob is still has that kind of control. Not saying it couldn't happen, just saying that you have to be careful when you say you found out from a key witness who that person is and what do they have to benefit from you looking at other places and blaming other people. Now, in the event that the mayor of a city and the sheriff is involved and the mafia is involved, there are still avenues for you. You don't waste your time on that agency or that city. You go to the state law enforcement agency, or you go to the FBI, because no one has the money to fight that kind of corruption, but there are still avenues. But I would warn you that is, and especially in 1971, Lynn, man, I don't know. This doesn't make any sense, because why would the mayor now care? Why would the sheriff now care? Why would anybody now jeopardize their career for something that happened 49 years ago? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't, it could have very well happened in 1971. There could have been corruption and cover up. But what doesn't make any sense is that it would still, the people would still be willing to jeopardize that. I mean, it's all new detectives. No one is still around from that sheriff's office. No one is still around from that mayor's, team. The mob and mafia should be, should have been eliminated from that area by now as well. I mean, it makes a little more sense than in 1971. There could have been some corruption, some conspiracy, but it doesn't make sense now that detectives would still try to cover that up. It doesn't do them any good. It's going to end up costing them if you get the feds involved, or if you get the state police involved, and now some detective that's 4 years on the force gets caught in a cover-up of something that happened 49 years ago. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I would definitely say, Lynn, and I know you can't type everything that's gone on in the case in this, but there's definitely more going on in that case than just what we're able to hit on right here. Kate says, everything we've been told here in Texas is that the agency has to ask for outside help. We've tried to get the Rangers, FBI, but the county will not cooperate and allow outside assistance. Lynn, so Lynn, let me real quick tell you, you can reach out to our office, area code 904-525-8080, area code 904-525-8080, and we'll post that, our contact information in the comments for you as well, so that we can get more information and see how we can help in that case. And then KH, typically whoever has jurisdiction of that investigation, they are the ones that hold the cards. If they want outside help, or need outside help, they have to ask. People can't just come in and take over jurisdictions, and take over investigations that are not in their jurisdiction. Also remember that the FBI doesn't really, they're not who you want investigating your loved one's homicide. I know that seems counterintuitive because we all watch the TV shows and we hear about the FBI, and the FBI is this kind of larger than life entity that is out there to help us. But the reality is the Federal Bureau of Investigation, their investigations have to cross state lines, cross country lines. They spend a lot of their time investigating white collar crimes, fraud, those kinds of things. Drug rings, sex trafficking rings, like large multi-state, multi-country investigations. They typically don't get involved in homicide investigations unless it somehow crosses a jurisdictional line, or there's a known suspect that has a warrant for their arrest and has fled the state, and then the FBI can get involved. But they don't do a whole lot of investigating of homicide cases. It's not really their forte. Now, they are who you want to investigate if you have corruption in your law enforcement agency, but also the state police. So in Florida, the state police is the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. And a lot of states, in Georgia, it's the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. In Colorado, it's the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. In Michigan, it's the Michigan State Police. So that's what you want to look for in your state. If you have an issue within local jurisdiction with your, police department or sheriff's office, if you suspect corruption, if you suspect there's something really going on and they are trying to cover something up, you can go to your state police. But I will tell you, if you go to state police, don't go to them and just say they haven't solved it, so I think that it's a cover-up. You probably need something more too than a key witness told us this, because a key witness may be a suspect that is trying to throw the scent off of themselves. So you really need hard evidence, and that goes back to kind of what we're talking about in engaging with the local law enforcement. So our what we think we should do is we should call and have either a phone conversation or a face-to-face conversation with the detective on our case. It's a lot harder for them to dismiss you, when they're looking you in the eye. But what we have found is that really email communication is best, because then it creates a paper trail. So what you do is, once you figure out who your detective is on your case, start emailing with them. And KH, I think Texas, I think it's the Rangers. Yeah. And we have a relationship with a specific Texas Ranger in Company A. And we have in the past, when we've had issues in Texas, been able to use him and call him, and then he knows Rangers in other companies. Derek, it's the Texas Department of Public Safety, and those are their law enforcement is the Texas Rangers. So, you can reach out to our office as well, and we can see if our contact within the Rangers can help, either if it's a Company A, issue. Because remember here now, and I don't want this to get lost on anybody, while we're battling these agencies because we're frustrated with their contacts, the only way that we get beyond that is to find some kind of common ground. So a lot of times how we kind of overcome a detective that is particularly frustrating or doesn't communicate is we use our connections within that agency through another means or through another agency like the Texas Rangers. And a lot of times when that call comes from them or comes from a superior, a supervisor, the communication changes, and that's what we want. But if we're always accusing them and always threatening them and always yelling at them, then we're going to have a really, really, really hard time moving forward. And quite honestly, you are entitled to all of that frustration. And we're not telling you that you can't voice that frustration, but what we're asking and what we're suggesting is to kind of harness that, speak your mind, let them know what has frustrated you in the past, why you feel the way you do, and then let's try to find some common ground and figure out how we're going to move forward, because the only way these cases get solved is moving forward. If we spend all of our time looking back at, what could have been, bad police work, it could have been a shoddy investigation, it could have been a cover-up, it could have been a conspiracy, it could have been any number of things, lack of witness, working together and or speaking with law enforcement. It could be so many things that that a case isn't solved from back then. We address those issues, we talk about them, and then we try to figure out what we can do from today moving forward, because the fact that somebody did not collect evidence correctly or didn't collect it the way we would collect it now, that's not going to solve the case. Bringing that mess up constantly. So you have to remember those things, that you got to address those frustrations, but then you've got to be willing to, once you've been heard, you've got to be willing to move forward. And I think that's really, really hard for most of us, but it's something that we have learned we have to do. KH says, we've been perfectly respectful the past 13 years and have been treated so poorly. That's frustrating. You're absolutely right. That's frustrating. And at some point you do get tired of it. And at some point you're going to lash out. At some point you're going to say things that have been building up inside of you. And quite honestly, that's okay, because you are entitled to that stuff. And even good law enforcement officers and good detectives will understand that after 13 years, it's boiled over, and sometimes you have to have that good, blow up. You just have to let it out. Our goal, is hopefully you can talk with us and we can work through some of that frustration and try to figure out what has been done or what hasn't been done, and maybe what else we can try to do, right? Because our goal is to keep finding solutions. If we stopped the first time they told us no, if we stopped the first time they ignored us and didn't respond to our phone call or email, we wouldn't be here. But we have learned to be slow and steady, and kind of be that, not necessarily the squeaky wheel, but be the family that's not going to go away, be the agency organization that's not going to go away. At some point you're going to have to deal with us, so you might as well do it now, and we love it when some law enforcement agency or some detective comes up with some reason why they can't do something, because we've seen it all before, and or seen a lot of it before, and we know of workarounds and solutions and ways to address those things and still move forward. So we all, so we welcome that kind of interaction with law enforcement. And again, KH and others that have expressed this frustration, when you are emailing, you have documented proof, right? So when your next step is to go to the supervisor, and the detective says, no, I called them back, they just didn't like what I had to say, you can say, well, look, I sent an email on this date asking for this. I sent an email on this date following up. I sent an email on that date, this date, and not once did I ever have a reply, and then the supervisor's not going to appreciate that, because you can't do those kinds of things in law enforcement and get away with it. So Kimberly says it's been 8 years since her daughter was murdered and no answers. The police department will not work with anyone. So let's talk about that, because that's the second person that's brought up, working with someone. We talked about it with, one of the other cases where they won't allow anybody else in to assist. And that is very, very, very common. And quite honestly, I rarely see a law enforcement agency or a detective welcome someone else in with open arms. I sit on the Florida Cold Case Advisory Commission, which is a statewide commission made up mostly of homicide detectives, forensic anthropologists, scientists, DNA scientists, medical examiners, and I'm the only advocate, survivor, civilian on the commission. And we have a hard time. We travel the state quarterly and ask sheriff's offices to come in and present cold cases to us, and we will review them and we will offer suggestions. And we even have a budget that will allow us to pay for travel, for private lab testing, for genetic genealogy, any number of things that could help and could assist in moving a case forward. And we still have hard times getting sheriff's offices to come present to us. And by the way, we are a part of the Florida Sheriff's Association. I am, like I said, I am the only civilian on that commission. We're mostly made. We have 3 sheriffs on that commission. We have I don't know how many, 10 or 12 homicide detectives, active homicide detectives on that commission. So these are, the people at the top of their game within Florida that are offering assistance and financing for, the financial burden for small agencies that maybe can't afford that kind of testing. And we still have a hard time getting people to present to us and, allow us in, so to speak. So that is not something that we, have, it's something that we have seen quite a bit. It's not something that you can really get over because you can't really force them. You can't force them to give up that investigation, give up jurisdiction of that case, short of there being something that is improper. You know what I mean? A conflict of interest. And again, that kind of goes back to those cover-up things. We hear people say that, their loved one, that the suspect was the son or daughter of a sheriff or was the sheriff. So that would be a conflict of interest for that agency to investigate that case. So, that would be a reason why they may be forced to give up jurisdiction. But again, you got to have proof of that kind of stuff, because you can't just make accusations like that. And then get the another jurisdiction to investigate it. Excuse me. So Kimberly says that there's DNA and they won't even work with CC Moore. I don't. Let's see. I'm gonna be careful about this. So genetic genealogy we've talked about in the past, and there is a lot that goes into that there's like these prerequisites and requirements before you can't just do genealogy on any case that has DNA. And this is something that the better the relationship you have with law enforcement, the more information you will get. So having DNA in a case doesn't automatically mean, that it's a candidate for genealogy. And without knowing that, I can't really speak to it. Let's see. You said you had to take a state representative with me last year. I asked them to turn the case over to the state, and they said no way. We need to talk, Kimberly, and probably privately, so not just having the conversation here openly. We need more information from you to figure out which agency that is and why it is that they are being so defiant, and then we can address specifically ways that we can try to work around that. You know what I mean? But it's hard for us to talk specifics when there's so much more information than you could possibly post in a comment, that we could work with. I'm going to put this back up for a second. And for those of you that that are commenting about a specific loved one's case, if you go to our website, projectcoldcase.org, you go to the contact tab at the top of the screen, there's a case submission tab. You click on that and you submit your loved one's case to us, and then we can really work to help you but we've got to get that information and then be able to do our due diligence and help. So anybody that we're talking to in there that hasn't done that yet, please go and submit your loved one's case so that we can, one, put their picture up and start working on raising awareness for the case, and two, start digging in a little bit about what specifically is going on and how we might be able to help. So again, in the scenario where you haven't talked to law enforcement in a really long time, you don't know if the case is active, suspended, inactive, cold, whatever, you call, you ask for the assigned detective, and then you want to try to create some conversation via email so that you have you have documentation of that conversation. So some of the questions you should ask is, when was the last time the case was reviewed? So we had somebody a little while ago. Who was it? It was Anissa said that the case was in 1971. Is that who it was? No, Lynn said that the case was 1971. So, they had no idea that DNA was a thing and that it could be used in 1971. So you have to find out, did they collect evidence that may have DNA on it? Because they wouldn't have collected it knowing, hey, this may have DNA on it, So you have to find out as much as you can about what evidence was collected. A lot of times in old cases like that, 1971, they may have kind of almost inadvertently collected something and not and it hasn't been tested. If they have a sheet that has blood or body fluid on it, and and it's never been tested for DNA, then that's something they can do. That's something that hasn't been done. So you need to ask, when was the last time the case was reviewed? Now, let's say it's a 1971 case. We'll use Lynn's case as an example. 1971, they investigated it, and they have periodically over the years reviewed that case and looked at it. And let's say that in 2010, they pulled that case file again. They went through the evidence. They did find something, fingernail scrapings or blood or something in the evidence, and they had it tested in 2010. And then let's say, it didn't go anywhere. They were able to get a DNA profile. Or let's say they weren't able to get a DNA profile. Let's say they found a DNA mixture. There was blood from two people in that sample in 2010. So they, put the case back away, and that's it. They don't touch it for a few years. And then 2019 rolls around, and Lynn calls up and she says, when was the last time my loved one's case was reviewed? And they say, in 2010, we did, a DNA test and came back a mixture. Well, from 2010 to today, there's been improvements in technology that can actually separate that mixture of DNA. So they would now, assuming they had a good bit of DNA, they would be able to go back in and remove, it's likely a mixture of the victim and the suspect. They would be able to go in and identify, okay, this is the victim's DNA, and now we have the separate DNA profile that we can run again, and they may be able to find the suspect that way. Same with fingerprints. The technology has improved. Same with shell casings, and there's all of this new technology out there that law enforcement has access to now that they haven't had access to even as like 5 years ago. So when you're calling and you find out, and this goes back, I'm gonna pull this up real quick again. So this goes back to when was the last time the case was reviewed? Well, they say, if they come back and say 2010, then you say, okay, well, can you bring it up to current investigative standards? And what that means is whatever technology is today, go back through that case file and bring up all the evidence to today's standards. And that's really where you want them to be. That is and you want to follow up on that every few years. If you're watching the news and you hear about genetic genealogy and you don't know whether your loved one's case is as a good fit, as eligible for genetic genealogy, call up and ask, send that email and ask. It's you really do. What we have learned is you have to be your loved one's best advocate and your loved one's voice, and this is one of the ways that you can do that. Is, oh, great, I appreciate the fact that you reviewed my loved one's case 10 years ago, but there's been such an advancement in technology. Can we run it again? If the DNA was not suitable to upload to CODIS in 2010, let's create a new profile where there's, with this better technology, more sensitive technology, then that DNA can be run through CODIS and see if there's a suspect that can be identified out there. Rachel says it's been 28 years since her mom's sister's death. The detective that currently have commented that after 25 years, everyone is a suspect. Is that true? Her family members that were children but remember my mom's yells when my grandma called from in the city away, 45 minutes away. How can that be? We just answered justice. So Rachel, I think that's a very, again, I wasn't there when that conversation was had, but in my experience, what I would say is that's a blanket statement that everyone is a suspect. And it was probably, I don't want to say probably, it very well could have been said as a way to comfort the family, as in, we start over. We don't just run down the same rabbit hole that the investigators did 25 years ago. What they might have been trying to say was, we're going to take this file, we're going to review it, and we're not going to have any prejudice, we're not going to have any bias. We're going to start from page 1, we're going to review it, and we're going to come up with our own suspects and our own theories. And that is a lot of ways that the cold case detectives will look at files that they're reviewing for years later. I mean, a lot of these detectives, 25 years ago, those detectives have all retired. They've promoted, they've died, whatever has happened to them, it's a new set of eyes. And so I hope that if I'm reading that question right, I hope that what they were trying to say was that they were going to give it a very fresh and thorough look, and not accusatory that, we're going to start looking at family and because we think they're involved. I think it was more of a start from scratch kind of comment. I hope that's what it was. I hope that answers your question a little bit. And not in an accusatory way. And then again, if they are, accusing or, have a theory that a family member was involved, hopefully there's a lot of witnesses that are still able to corroborate stories that will clear them in any case. I mean, you have to have a lot of evidence to make an arrest and then try to, indict and get a conviction. So that would be my guess, is that I don't think it was meant to be accusatory. So we talked about bringing them up to current investigative standards. Were there any findings that could advance the investigation of this cold case? So 2 things there. Try, and as you build rapport with these investigators, they'll give you more and more information. And we talk a lot about, you don't have to have a great relationship with them. You just have to be respectful, right? And what I mean by that is not that you cater to them and you beg them and plead them, but that you have a mutual understanding and a mutual respect for each other. That respect is, this is the detective on my loved one's case. He or she has control over every bit of information that I have. So you want to have some form of respect for that, even if it's not an unhappy respect for that. And in turn, what you want them to have is a respect that this is your family member, this is your loved one. You deserve answers. You want answers. This isn't going away. You're not going away. So you might as well work together. And again, it doesn't have to be buddy-buddy. You don't have to be, best friends with the detective. You don't even have to like each other. But what you should do is have a mutual respect. You should have a common goal, and that is resolving this case. So that's the kind of respect that I mean, and we're all about accountability here. If a detective is not doing something that they said they would do, then you should hold them accountable. And the ways you can do that is you follow their chain of command. So if it's a homicide detective, you go to the sergeant. If the sergeant isn't willing to help you, then you go to, the lieutenant and up the chain, assistant chief, chief, director, sheriff, police chief, whatever it is. But try to go up the chain. You'll get better results typically if you go to that direct supervisor and say, I have reached out to Detective so-and-so X number of times. He or she refuses to return my calls. He or she will not tell me basic information. And I'm frustrated and I want to address this. And that will sometimes work. So Rachel says also, let's see. Oh, that was the same message that she said. She says she's frustrated because they never return her messages. So again, Rachel, I don't know if you may have come in a little bit late, but get an email address from that detective that won't return phone calls and start emailing. Start email something. Hey, I've called a couple times, haven't received a call back, would like to discuss X. Give that a week. If you haven't heard anything, hey, Detective so-and-so, I'm following up on my email from last week. I have some questions I would like to discuss with you. Please call me at your convenience or email me back. It's fine. And if after 2 or 3 emails, now you have evidence that investigator is not returning your calls. And there is absolutely no excuse for an investigator not returning your calls. So when you have that physical in-hand proof, then you go to that supervisor that I was just talking about and you say, I have sent 3 emails to Detective so-and-so and have not had one response. I sent an email on January 1st, on February 1st, on March 1st, and in 3 months I haven't heard back. Now you have the leverage because now the supervisor wants to know why a family is calling and bothering him or her because you don't have the time to return a phone call. So now you have the leverage. So that's my recommendation for that. Kathy says, my son was murdered in 2010. I talked to detectives for 2 years. He was they were all rude. And that's another thing that we hear. Remember that these detectives are, we want to develop a relationship with them. We want to be friends with them. We want them to recognize our pain and to understand why this is so important to us. And those are few and far between. There are those detectives out there. We know a few of them. We know a lot of them, actually. But then we have heard and we have seen others that are more like what Kathy is describing. They're very short. They're very rude. They don't really have time for you. You're getting in the way. And that's how they treat you. That's not acceptable either. So again, in these situations where you have maybe on a phone call or in person, if you can still document that stuff. So after you hang up that phone, get a notebook out. It says, on July 29th at 3:30, I spoke to Detective so-and-so. I asked X, he responded Y, and he responded in a rude way. He responded in what I felt like was an inappropriate way. Or you can, quote what he said. He said, my loved one was, if my loved one hadn't been buying drugs, he wouldn't be dead. That's not appropriate. And, that's a training issue. So there's still ways to document your interaction with law enforcement. And that is, as we have found, has been the best way to address these issues. So keep that in mind. Email people. If you do talk to them on the phone or in person, document what you said. Don't just document the bad stuff. When I talked to Detective so-and-so on June 8th, he was very polite and cordial and answered my questions. On July 29th, not so much. Well, maybe he was having a bad day. She was having a bad day. If you start to see a pattern of of being rude, then you have that documented again. And remember, from the law enforcement perspective, from the detective perspective, they don't want to talk to you when your case is unsolved because they don't have information. They want to call you and tell you they made an arrest and do the victory lap. They don't want to have to talk to you every month and tell you, no, we still have not resolved your loved one's case. They feel like a failure. It can look like from the outside that they have failed, and they don't like being reminded of that. Just like most of us don't like being reminded of something we haven't been able to complete. But we hear that over and over from law enforcement, that why would I call the family if I have nothing new to tell them? And so we want to find new things to communicate with. But we don't want them to be able to use that. I don't have anything to say. Well, we're asking specific questions here. Who's the detective? When was the last time it was reviewed? Is it eligible for some new technology like genetic genealogy? If we're asking the questions, then they really are obligated to answer. If we're expecting them to just call and say, nothing new, nothing new, nothing new, we're never going to get that. They just won't do it. But we can come up with ways to keep that conversation going and that engagement going. So we've talked about this a little bit. Is the case suspended or being actively investigated? That, in my experience, is really important, because sometimes they will just kind of let a family believe that the case is still actively being investigated, and it's not. It's either been suspended, it's been moved to inactive, or it's been sent to the cold case unit. It's been moved to a cold case, and those things are not the conversations they want to have with you. In Jacksonville, Florida, where we're based out of, the agency has a policy to sit down with the family when they suspend a case and tell them that the case has been suspended, and tell them why, and answer any questions that the family has. So that's their policy, and I know for a fact that it doesn't always happen. I can tell you for a fact it happened in my dad's case. They sat me down and told me that the case was suspended. They did exactly what they were supposed to do. But I have talked to a lot of families that have not had that same courtesy, and had not been I've not had to sit down with the discussion about why a case is being suspended. And it was very eye-opening for me. It was also a very difficult conversation, because while I had tried in my mind to understand that maybe my loved one, my dad's case, was never going to get solved, I had not even thought for a second that a day would come where the police were going to stop looking for the person that killed my dad. And that was something that I had to resolve, and I had lots of questions about that. And the detective explained to me that they had talked to all the witnesses, they had tested all the evidence, they had put out feelers in the community, they had raised reward, they had done press conference, billboard, a lot of things that happened in conjunction with Crime Stoppers in our area, the media, and they had really reached a point where there was nothing left to investigate. And that's really when the family needs to step up. And instead of that being the conversation being, okay, we're suspending the case, now nobody does anything, that's really when it's our time to come in and start raising awareness for these cases. Because what they need is they need that one person to call with a tip, or call with a lead, or send something in, and say, okay, it's time for the community to step up. It's time for the neighborhood to come together and to help with this case. Did you see something on this night? And so that's really when their job stops, when they have run out of things to investigate. That's when I really feel like it's time for the family, and for Project Cold Case, and for family, friends, and supporters to really step up and try to get a new lead, force their hand to keep that investigation open. So Tamiko is asking, is there a way we can put a spotlight on cold cases that haven't been submitted by family members? And we don't, we want everything submitted by a family because our job is advocacy. So we want to assist the family. There's a lot of true crime websites out there and social media pages that share a lot of cases that they don't have connections with the family. And sometimes that backfires. We really want permission from the family. We really want their support, and we want to support them. So we will talk about other cases. Sometimes we share stories on other cases, but as far as like our spotlights, we go from the cases that have been submitted to us, which is well over 800 of them now. So we have plenty of cases that we can pick from. Now, sometimes the media and sometimes law enforcement pick cases that are not, have not come from us, or, aren't with our agency. The last one that First Coast News did, in fact, they're doing one tonight, or they did one tonight, that we are with, connected to the family, and we assisted in that Unsolved series on the local news that aired tonight. But the one they did prior, we didn't have contact with the family, so we still shared the story that Katie Jeffries did with First Coast News, and that was the one that actually was a missing persons, that they thought she had been murdered, and she hadn't. She was alive and living in another state. And when everybody shared the story, it's why it's so important to share these social media posts. And when it was shared, she saw it, and she called her family and let them know that she was still alive. So we always will try to promote awareness for cases, but we can do so much more when we have family contact information. And then we'd like to do, like Tamiko with you, we've done the local news, we've done a spotlight, and then when those other opportunities come up where we're going to do something, we like to be able to let the family know. And give me a second here. So I'm looking for, as you know, Tamiko, we put your mom on our on a deck of playing cards that we handed out to a lot of law enforcement officers at a homicide conference last year. And so, we really would prefer to have, permission from the family, that they know that, hey, when these opportunities come up, we may use your loved one's image to promote the case in other ways, beyond just a spotlight, beyond just the media campaign. So that worked out well for some families, and we want to be able to help them along the way. Yeah. See, and that was the thing, to me. We wanted to be able to send that, to the families. Like, once we printed those decks of cards and we handed them out to law enforcement, then we wanted to send the family the deck so that they had it themselves as well. And so we can't do that if it's a case that hasn't officially been submitted to us. We don't know where to send it. So, and then kind of in closing, the last thing is schedule a meeting with law enforcement. Tamika knows this because we had that meeting in our office. We've had those meetings before, and they're not easy. Sometimes they can be intimidating. We offer, for local cases or even some regional cases, we've had St. Johns County Sheriff's Office come to our office. Clay County isn't far, Baker County, Nassau County, Duval County, pretty much we request that the officers come to our office, the detectives come to our office, the families come to our office. We like to say it's a neutral venue, but it's really not neutral. It really is way more sympathetic to the family, to the survivors, and we feel like that's important. If you go down to the police station, you have to go through metal detectors. You're taken into a room with no windows, and you're sat down in a conference room with 3 detectives, 4 detectives staring at you, it can be very intimidating. And it's hard enough to remember the questions you have and to remember the things that they tell you. In our office, you come in, no metal detectors, nothing to be intimidated about. It's the same conference room we use for our in-person support groups. So we are there with you. We're helping you with the questions. We can bring up questions. We can also remember, when you go home and you're like, oh my gosh, what did the detective say about this? I already forgot. You can call our office. Frida takes great notes. Sometimes we can remember, we have it written down, and we can help you with that because it's just really more complicated. And it's harder. And we always tell them, start writing your notes now. We set up a meeting for 2 weeks from now. So start, writing notes. And no family ever makes their notes. No one ever writes down their questions. We'll continue to encourage families to do it. But rarely do they do it. And then they come in, they think, I've had these questions on my mind for, X number of years. There's no way I'm going to forget. And then there's something about being in that room with the detective and the case file. And you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot, or I didn't remember everything. So we like to be able to assist with that. We're now doing Zoom meetings with law enforcement. If you can get, we've done it with our local agencies. If you can get your agency, or the investigating agency on your loved one's case to agree, then we will set up the Zoom call, or we will participate if they prefer to set up the Zoom call. We can be there as your advocate. We can assist. We can help ask questions. And then again, we can do that as well. We've done it a number of times already. Frida, myself, the survivor, and the detective, sometimes multiple survivors, sometimes multiple detectives. And that's usually a little less anxiety filled when you're doing it from the computer as well. So if there's ways like that we can help, we will. But we definitely encourage you, to have that meeting. Once you've kind of gone through the list and identified who it is and identified some of those questions, ask them to meet with you. It's the least they could do, right? So anyway, I hope that was helpful. I hope that gave people some information on ways to address and engage with your detective on your loved one's case. Hopefully it will assist in getting some answers. I know there's a lot of anger and frustration when you're a survivor. I am a survivor. I've had that anger and frustration. I've tried both ways. I've tried being mean. I've tried, being mad, and I've tried being calm. And what I've done is I've kind of immersed myself in information so that they couldn't just dismiss me. There's a right way and a wrong way. If they know that they're not going to get rid of you, sometimes the easiest thing to do is to just sit down and have that conversation with you. And if you can, again, hold them accountable in a respectful way, and then hopefully they will gain that respect for you that you gave them that respect in turn. Then maybe you can start developing a relationship that leads to more frequent communication and better communication, which is certainly the key. So thanks everyone for joining us tonight. We posted in the comments our contact information and how to reach us. I know there were a couple of families that needed some more specific guidance on their case. So I hope you'll reach out to our office. We're open, Monday through Friday, regular, normal business hours. We will get back with you as quick as we can. We can set up a Zoom to talk with you instead of a phone call if you would prefer. Anything like that is possible. So please remember that. Please know that we're here to help, and we will do whatever we can, whatever their answer is, whatever if they say no, if they say no for a certain reason, we're going to find another way. We're going to continue to work to make sure families have as much information as they can and can assist, in working towards resolution on their loved one's case. Tamika, Shannon, Derek, thank you guys for joining us. Everybody that engaged and asked questions, we really appreciate it. Joey, thank you. I'm really glad to hear you're doing better. I got a text from Frida tonight about you, that you and Sarah are doing okay. So we'll be back next week with another Facebook Live. In the meantime, be sure to share these stories and engage with the with the public and get your loved one's case and information out there. Thanks a lot. ProjectColdCase.org if you need to submit your loved one's case under the contact tab. We'll see you next week. Thanks.